Hi everybody, this is Maureen Wong for YourNextStamp.com. Today I'm going to be making this. It's a quilt square card, and I modeled this after a quilt pattern called the Log Cabin, I believe it is. And I did this with strips of paper and some new dies from Your Next Stamp. So let's get started. Okay, so the supplies I'm going to be using today are the new stitched squares, and I actually only used the tiniest one from the center, and then my Scrapworks strips, I used the second from the smallest. And what I did was I cut whatever I wanted my center of my quilt square to be, and then I've cut a bunch of strips just with that one size strip die, and it just so happens that this strip is exactly the same width as the littlest square from the Stitch Square set, so that's why I chose it. But if you don't have the Stitch Square set, by all means you can just cut one of these and then cut it into a square shape, and if you run it through again you can probably make the stitching detail go all the way around. I don't know if you can see on this one that the stitching detail does go all the way around. Sorry for my wrinkly fingers, I was just doing the dishes. So the other thing you're gonna need is a paper trimmer, and I kind of wish I had a smaller one than this, but I'm using my Fiskars Sure-Cut trimmer. And then the other thing I'm going to need is a piece of sticker paper, and I've got a whole sheet here, and what I'm going to do is cut it down to size, and I'm not sure exactly what size I'm going to make my quilt square yet, so what I'm going to do is cut my sticker paper a bit larger than I think I'm going to need. And the other reason for that is because we're going to be starting in the center, and I don't want to be all measury and actually figure out where's the exact center of this and what's straight and what's not. So I'm cutting this a little bit bigger. I imagine that it's going to be about an inch smaller than this. I cut this 5 inches square. And then I'm going to go ahead and take off the back. And I've showed you this tip before for doing inlaid die cuts, that we just do stuff on the back of sticker paper, and it really makes things easy so you don't have to be using adhesive. I'm going to try and stick that down in the middle, kind of straight, but I'm still just eyeballing it, so don't worry about that. Excuse me. So this strip is a 1/2 inch wide, and what I'm gonna do is pick a strip from my little collection that I've cut here that I want to go next to my center, and I think this is a good one. And you can see how I actually did use a scrap piece of paper. Both ends have bits cut out of them, so what I'm gonna do is just cut off those ragged edges. And then I'm going to measure 1/2 to make this a square. And then I'm going to put that right next to my initial square. Now the next piece is going to be the same width, of course. It's always going to be this width, the 1/2 inch width, but now I'm going to span the width of these two squares, and they're both a 1/2 inch, so that makes it an inch. So I'm going to cut this next strip at an inch. And of course my sticker paper is going to be sticking everywhere, but that's okay. And then I'm going to stick it right there. And then what I'm going to do is choose my next pattern. So I think I want to use this, no, how about this, maybe this stripe. Okay, so the thing about my strips is that when I cut them whole so that they have both ends intact. I'm actually not going to be using the very end because it has stitching on 3 sides, and for my quilt strips I only want the stitching on 2 sides so that it'll be uniform. So the first thing I'm going to do when I have a full strip like this is just cut off the very end and throw that away. Now for this next piece, I'm going to make another piece that's the same size as this one. So the first piece you make with any new pattern is going to be the same size as the last piece you made with that other pattern. And then I'm going to stick that down. And then for the next piece, the second piece of that pattern, you're going to span across these 3. So that would be 1.5 inches. So let me turn my strip around, and I'm going to put it at 1.5 and cut that. And of course my sticker paper is going to stick to my arm. I'm working with a really small little area here. I'm trying to keep it all on camera. And I always have a tiny little workspace. So when you're doing this, you of course can spread out your materials a little bit more, and then you'll have an easier time doing this without things getting stuck all over your paper and whatnot. Okay, and then I'm going to pick my next pattern, which is going to be going next to this yellow. And so I think I'm going to do this one. I like this small pattern. So again, it's going to be the same size as the last one, which was 1.5. And then I'm just going to stick that right next to those pieces. And then, of course, it's going to span across this whole thing. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 halves. Sorry about my dogs there. So that would be 2. So let me line this up with 2 and cut that piece. And then it's going to touch the piece of the same pattern, and then it's going to go across the other way. And so you just continue this pattern all the way around. It's the same size as the last one, and then you're going to span the whole next side, and you go all the way around and all the way around until you get to the size you want. And I'm going to go off camera now and finish that up, and I will be right back. Okay, so I finished laying down all my strips, and for when I got to the ending, I actually had to cut 2 strips out of the same paper to have enough length to go across this way, because the final strip across this way is 4.5 inches. And now what I'm going to do is take my Fiskars Sure-Cut trimmer, and I really like this because it has the wire guide so I can see where I'm cutting, because I want to cut off all this extra sticker paper. So I'm going to line it up against my quilt square and take off that extra. Okay, one more. Okay, there we go. And now I can put my trimmer away. And I have just my quilted panel left over. What I've gone ahead and done is cut a piece of pattern paper from that same paper pad. This is like in a craft with a grid. and I was planning on putting it on there, but I think it's just a little bit too busy. So what I'm gonna do is I have a card base, and this is a 5.5 inch, I mean not 5.5, 5 inch by 10 inch piece of cardstock scored in half, so I have a 5 inch square, and then I'm gonna just mat my 4.5 inch quilt square on there, and well, let me put the adhesive on the back. And then what I'm gonna do is look at it and decide which pattern I want to go where, and I think I like it this way, so I'm gonna put it down. And this is a really simple card. I'm not gonna do a sentiment on it. What I can do is do a sentiment on the inside, but I think this makes just a great blank note card. And I don't even have to make it this big, the 5 inch square. I could actually make it just a 4.5 inch square and have this quilt square covering the whole front of the card, and I think that would look really nice as well. So I hope you like this project using some new products from Your Next Stamp, and I hope to see you over at yournextstamp.com. Thank you very much for watching.